Forever September, 1883. The stagecoach was leaving in less than 20 minutes. Lillian Kendrick stood at the ticket counter with trembling hands as the agent counted her coins for the third time. Finally, he sighed, "I'm sorry. Miss, but you're $2 short." Words hit her like a punch. $2. Just $2. Stood between her and the future she had traveled hundreds of miles to reach. A teaching position waited for her in Cheyenne. Wyoming, a fresh start. A chance to leave behind the grief that haunted every street of Bismarck. But now, that future seemed to be slipping away. "Please," she whispered. "I can pay the rest when I arrive." The agent shook his head. "I can't." Lillian lowered her eyes, fighting tears. Around her, travelers shifted impatiently. She had nowhere else to go. No family, no home, no backup plan. 6 months earlier, scarlet fever had taken both of her parents. Since then, life had become a series of difficult choices and lonely nights. Now even this opportunity seemed lost. Then a calm voice spoke behind her. "I'll take care of it," Lillian turned. The man standing there looked like he belonged to the open prairie itself, tall, broad, shouldered, weathered by sun and wind. A cowboy, without hesitation. He placed money on the counter. "Give her a ticket," Lillian stared at him. "You don't even know." "Me?" The stranger smiled slightly. "My name is Patrick Crawford." His dark eyes met hers. "And it looks like you need to get on that stage." The journey west took nearly 2 days. At first, they barely spoke. Lillian sat quietly beside him, unsure what to make of the stranger who had changed the course of her life in a matter of seconds. But mile after mile, conversation came naturally. Patrick wasn't what she expected. He wasn't loud. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't trying to impress her. He simply listened. When she spoke about losing her parents, he listened. When she admitted she was terrified of starting over, he listened. And somehow that simple kindness made the burden feel lighter. For his part, Patrick spoke about ranch life, about endless skies, about horses, about long days spent working cattle across Wyoming. He talked about his mother, a former school teacher who had taught him to read and love books. By sunset of the first day, Lillian found herself smiling more than she had in months. By the second day, she found herself wishing the journey would never end. But all journeys end eventually. Late one afternoon, the stagecoach rolled into Cheyenne. Patrick helped her down. Neither seemed eager to say goodbye. Still, life waited for them. Lillian had a teaching position to begin. Patrick had a ranch 30 miles outside town. They exchanged awkward farewells, then went their separate ways. Life in Cheyenne was harder than Lillian expected. The head mistress of the school, Martha Hollings, ruled the institution with military discipline. Nothing was ever good enough. Nothing was ever fast enough. Every lesson was inspected, every mistake criticized. Lillian worked harder than she ever had before. But at night, lying in her small room, her thoughts often drifted to a cowboy with kind eyes and a quiet smile. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, while walking back from the post office, she heard someone call her name. She turned, and there he was, Patrick. Her heart leapt so suddenly she almost laughed. "I was hoping I'd run into you," he said. Lillian smiled. "So was I." They spent the afternoon talking over coffee and pie. What began as a simple conversation quickly became something more. Both admitted they had thought about each other often. Neither had expected the other to say it. For the first time since arriving in Cheyenne, Lillian felt truly happy. From then on, Wednesdays became special. Wednesday afternoons were her only free time, and almost every Wednesday, Patrick rode into town. They walked together, talked together, laughed together. The friendship deepened into something neither could ignore. Patrick told her about his dream. Someday he wanted land of his own, not a huge ranch, just enough land to build a home and raise a family. Lillian loved listening to him talk about the future, because for the first time in years, she could imagine herself in one. One golden autumn afternoon, beneath falling cottonwood leaves. Patrick stopped walking. His voice grew quiet. "Lillian," she looked at him. "I think I'm falling in love with you." For a moment, neither moved. Then tears filled her eyes. "Patrick," she smiled through them. "I think I'm falling in love with you, too." He stepped closer, and beneath the Wyoming sky, they shared their first kiss. Winter arrived early. Snow covered the prairie. Travel became difficult. Some weeks, Patrick couldn't make it into town at all. During those weeks, they wrote letters, long letters, honest letters, letters filled with dreams, letters filled with love. Every letter ended the same way: "I miss you." The separation only made their feelings stronger. Meanwhile, Patrick worked harder than ever. He saved every spare dollar, took extra jobs, skipped unnecessary expenses. Month after month, his savings grew. Finally, in early spring, he achieved something he had dreamed about for years. He bought 50 acres of land, his own land. When he told Lillian, she threw her arms around him. "I knew you could do it," Patrick laughed. "I haven't even told you the best part yet." "What?" "I'm building a house." For the next several months, Patrick devoted every spare hour to construction. He cut timber, raised walls, built a stone chimney, installed windows, everything with his own hands. Every Wednesday, he brought progress reports. "The foundation is done, the roof is up, the chimney is finished." Each update felt like another step toward their future. Then, one Sunday, Patrick brought her to see it. The little house sat beside a creek. Mountains rose in the distance. Wildflowers covered the surrounding hills. It wasn't large, but it was beautiful because it represented hope. Home. Future. Patrick took her hand, then suddenly dropped to one knee. Lillian Kendrick, her breath caught. "I don't have wealth," he smiled nervously. "I don't have fancy things, but I have this land." He looked up at her. "And I have a heart that belongs completely to you." He opened a small box. Inside rested a simple gold ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face. "Yes." She laughed through her tears. "Yes, Patrick." They married on the first day of June. The ceremony was small, simple, perfect. Afterward, Patrick carried his bride home to the cabin he had built. That night, sitting beside the fire, Lillian realized something. For the first time since her parents died, she wasn't lonely anymore. She was home. Life wasn't easy. Money was scarce. The work never ended. Lillian learned to cook on a wood stove, wash clothes by hand, tend gardens, care for animals. Her hands became rough, her muscles ached, but she loved every minute of it because she wasn't facing life alone. She had Patrick, and Patrick had her. Together they built something stronger than either of them could have built alone. A year later, their son Samuel was born. Patrick cried when he held him for the first time. Years later, a daughter named Grace followed, then another son, then another daughter. Their family grew, their ranch grew, their dreams grew. The decades passed. The little ranch slowly became one of the most respected properties in the region. Patrick gained a reputation for raising exceptional horses. Lillian taught all of their children to read and write. The children grew into capable adults. Eventually they married, then came grandchildren, and later, great-grandchildren. The little cabin expanded into a large family home filled with laughter. Yet despite all the success, Patrick never forgot the day everything began. One evening, nearly 40 years after they first met, he sat beside Lillian on the porch watching the sunset. "Do you ever think about that day at the stage station?" he asked. Lillian smiled. "Every day," Patrick squeezed her hand. "If I hadn't paid your fare, you did," she said softly. "And that's what matters." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind moved gently through the grass. Children laughed somewhere in the distance. and together they watched the sun sink behind the mountains. Time eventually caught up with them. Their hair turned gray. Their steps slowed. Their children took over. Most of the ranch work, but their love never changed. Even after 50 years of marriage, they still held hands while walking, still sat together on the porch every evening, still looked at each other the same way they had all those years ago. When Patrick passed away at 83, Lillian sat beside him holding his hand. His final words were simple: "Thank you for everything." 3 months later, Lillian followed him. Their family buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, the life they had built together, the family they had built together. Today, their descendants still tell the story of a young woman who couldn't afford a stagecoach ticket, the story of a cowboy who paid her fare, and the story of a single act of kindness that created generations of love. Above the old stone fireplace in the family home hangs a photograph of Patrick and Lillian together. Beneath it are words Patrick carved many years ago, words that perfectly captured their entire life. She needed help, he gave it. They built forever. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. You never know when one small act of kindness will change a life or create a legacy that lasts for generations.